Well, I may have been slightly wrong. First impressions with games are usually those make or break moments where you decide whether this is something that you want to continue playing. My first impression of Prey was not good. I didn't like the controls, I found the enemies to be uninspired, audio bugs were killing the mood, and everything felt so slow. Having said that, I am pleased to say that I had a much better experience on PC. To most people, this might seem like a given. But as a person who is still new to the benefits of PC gaming, it came as a shock to me that the FPS boost could fix so many problems. We'll talk about that later. For now, I want to jump right into the story. Prey tells the story of Morgan Yu. Depending on your chosen gender, he or she has recently joined the TranStar research team. During some tests at the facility, a doctor is attacked and killed by an alien creature, resulting in Morgan being knocked out and taken back to their apartment. After escaping from the apartment, you discover that you've been on the space station Talos 1 for 3 years, and that you're in danger. Morgan meets up with a character named January who fills in the gaps with a pre-recorded video of you explaining the situation. But before you can learn anything, your brother Alex cuts off the feed. Your first major task is to restore that connection and find out what Morgan was trying to say about the station and where the creatures, now named the Typhon, came from. I won't go too deep into the story to avoid spoilers, but I think it's fair to say from what I've experienced, if you focused only on completing the main quest, you'll miss out on a decent chunk of the narrative. A nice portion of the story and exposition are hidden away in terminals and side quests that you'll unlock as you explore Talos 1. There's a few different ways you can reach the endgame. The choices you make will determine what ending you have and ultimately what happens to Morgan. For example, killing too many people could trigger a poorer ending, while fully completing one side quest could end the game early. And speaking of side quests, in a lot of games, side quests feel as if they've been shoehorned in as padding. I didn't get that impression with Prey, thankfully. As I already said, playing through a side quest will give you some extra insight into the story, but it also rewards you accordingly. Whether you find a cache of junk or a box of neuromods, to survive the Typhon, you're going to need the extra supplies. Especially on harder difficulties where you'll be crafting medkits as quickly as you find the required materials. There's a decent challenge involved and a few different methods to accomplishing your task. One of the things I enjoyed most was the different ways to get into locked areas. You could hack the door if your skills are high enough, find the keycard, or resort to toys. If I had one bad thing to say about side quests, it would be how much it forces you to backtrack through certain areas. Talos is a huge station with so many different sections, and constantly having to go back and forth between locations very quickly got old, even with the shortcuts. The main story requires you to shift between areas, but with the addition of side quest it amplifies it. But to be fair, that's a small price to pay for what you get in return. I'm so glad that I got to try Prey on PC, because it really does feel like a massive step up from the console version. That sluggish and delayed feeling that I experienced in the demo is almost non-existent thanks to the frame boost. I tried playing with a controller and with my keyboard and mouse. Both feel great, with the keyboard and mouse feeling the best. Because of the game feeling faster and more responsive, I had much more fun fighting enemies and maneuvering through the station. At no point did I experience the frustration I felt when playing on my Xbox. And speaking of the enemies, I said in my first impressions video that Prey had some dull encounters. I felt like the mimics were mostly there to provide jump scares and little else, and I still feel the same way, but I'm starting to appreciate what they are. Try to imagine it for a second. You're trapped on a space station with things that can disguise themselves as anything. That's a little scary. Naturally, there are stronger enemies as you progress through the game, like the Phantom and the Telepaths, and they mix things up nicely. With mimics, your best strategy seems to be using the glue gun and then beat the crap out of them with your trusty wrench. You can use this method on Phantoms, but not for as long, and the Telepaths just shake it off before you can properly trap them. There's also the Typhon Nightmare that hunts you down for a few minutes. You can either kill it or hide from it. Personally, I hid in the ladies' toilets. Exploring Talos is a huge thing in Prey, and something that you will be rewarded for if you know where to look. Completing the side quests is a great way to bag some extra resources that you can use to recycle and craft new items. There's something oddly satisfying about returning to a recycling station with an inventory full of crap that you're going to turn into usable materials. Among the materials, you can find neuromods that tie directly into the story, but they act as your method of upgrading Morgan. Eventually you're able to build neuromods with a crafting table, but they will drain your resources quickly if you're not careful. Some of the abilities that you can unlock are standard stuff like health upgrades, hacking, and strength, but you can unlock some very special Typhon abilities that mix the gameplay up even more. The one drawback to this is that the automated turrets scattered around Talos might identify you as a Typhon and try to kill you. Overall, the gameplay reminded me of Bioshock with some Dishonored mixed in, which is appropriate since Prey was developed by the same people who developed Dishonored. As I mentioned in my first impressions video, Prey does have some strange sound design. I'm not sure why the default audio has to be so high, but I had to turn it down to at least 20 in the settings, and even then I could still hear everything perfectly. I know the idea behind it is to help immerse you in the universe and atmosphere, but I didn't get that feeling at all. If the music is too loud for you, just switch it down to something more to your taste and you'll be ready to go. Soundtrack wise, I don't remember many of the tracks, which is a shame. The prologue had some great music as you fly through the city, but after that I struggle to remember any other song. The tracks that you do hear as you go through the station get the job done nicely, however. They just aren't very memorable in my opinion. Despite having a lukewarm reaction to Prey, I'd say it grew on me, mainly because of the console problems being non-existent on PC. If I wanted to recommend Prey to a friend, I'd tell them to get it on PC and avoid the more expensive and inferior console version. If you still want to go with a console version, more power to you, that is your decision. With the improvements experienced on PC, I'm happy to say that I'm a fan of Prey's reboot. There's a lot of content packed into the game, so even if the main story doesn't grab your attention, the time that you could sink into just the exploration is worth the price of admission, at least in my opinion. Another recommendation I have is that if you want to try Prey and have a PC that can run it, don't bother with the console demo. Buy the PC game and try it for 2 hours. If by then you're still not convinced by it, you can request a refund on Steam. But given what I've experienced from the game, I'm confident that you'll start to enjoy your time on Talos as much as I have. Prey is an interesting game. It has a few hiccups, but in the end I'd be happy to recommend or even buy it for a friend.